Chapter 31 Rouse the Tiger to Eat the Wolf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 31 Rouse the Tiger to Eat the Wolf. Buzz. The valley seemed to tremble all of a sudden. The conflagration ape king's enormous body seemed to becoming increasingly fierce. Its ugly face was filled with violence, and it was obvious that it was extremely ferocious. Mu Chen, Lei Cheng and the others became serious as they stared astonished at the conflagration ape king. Who would have thought that the conflagration ape king would actually make a breakthrough at this critical moment? From its aura, the conflagration ape king had probably reached the peak of the middle-rank spiritual beast. It is equivalent to a powerhouse at the spiritual rotation stage late phase. Spiritual rotation stage late phase. Mu Chen exchanged gazes with Lei Cheng. They secretly let out a bitter sound. It was extremely rare to meet such an event. Their luck was quite bad. "Captain, what should we do?" Lin Zhong and the others' faces were pale and they quickly asked. Lei Cheng thought for a moment and gritted his teeth as he said. The conflagration ape king is about to make its breakthrough. However, it is also seriously injured. Let's try once more. If we fail to get rid of it, we will immediately retreat. Lin Zhong and the others heard this and nodded. This was a surprising turn of event. Although they wanted the jaded essence fruit, their lives were more important than that. Mu Chen also made a gesture towards Tang Qianer and the others, who were far away. He signaled them to retreat if the situation turns out poorly. When Mu Chen reminded Tang Qianer and the others, the conflagration ape king suddenly issued out a furious roar. The violent eyes firmly fixed itself onto Mu Chen's body. It was obvious that it clearly remembered Mu Chen, who had injured it. The conflagration ape king has an extremely vengeful heart. It was not his wisdom that made it view Mu Chen as a definite target to rip apart. Therefore, it attacked first and its huge ape arm picked up a massive boulder. It treated the boulder as a weapon as it smashed it towards Mu Chen. When Mu Chen noticed this, his toes touched the ground and he jumped back agilely. He completely avoided the conflagration ape king's violent attack. With the spiritual rotation stage late phase strength, Mu Chen did not dare to let this big guy touch him at all. He was afraid that he would either be dead or gravely injured if he was touched. Seeing that the conflagration ape king pounced towards Mu Chen, Lei Cheng hurried to help him. But what surprised them was that the conflagration ape king completely ignored their attacks and would only smash towards Mu Chen in berserk. It forced Mu Chen to be in a slightly helpless position. Roar! The conflagration ape king became furious when it noticed that Mu Chen avoided it swiftly. It suddenly let out a sharp howl, which resounded within the valley. Then, Lei Cheng and the others were horrified when they noticed that there were signs of awakening on the conflagration apes that they hypnotized. This discovery made their faces turn pale. If the hundreds of conflagration apes wake up inside the valley, there were no chances of escaping today. "Captain, all the conflagration apes would definitely wake up if the conflagration ape king continues to howl." Lin Zhong and the others said in shock. Mu Chen also noticed this situation. His face became more and more serious. His eyes flashed and he stared at the jaded essence tree inside the crack of the mountain walls. He bit his teeth furiously and said, "Big brother Lei Cheng, I'll lure their conflagration ape king away. You guys should use your speed to take away the jaded essence fruit." "What?" Lei Cheng was surprised when he heard that. The conflagration ape king is at the level of spiritual rotation stage late phase while Mu Chen was only at the spiritual movement stage middle phase. It would be extremely dangerous if he were to lure it away by himself. "There's no time. The conflagration ape king is targeting me. You won't be able to pull it away." As Mu Chen's voice rang out, a dark black spiritual energy has already wrapped around his legs. His speed increased exponentially and he darted to the outside of the valley like an arrow. Behind him, the conflagration ape king did not hesitate at all and it chased after him as it howled. Lei Cheng and the others were stunned as they watched Mu Chen luring away the Conflagration Ape King. In the end, Lei Cheng gritted his teeth and said, "Hurry, we have no time to lose. Lin Zhong, you should bring a group to stop the conflagration apes that are beginning to awaken. I'll go get the jaded essence fruit." "Yes." Lin Zhong and the others wiped the blood off their mouth. They quickly nodded and charged towards the conflagration apes that stumbled as they stood up. Lei Cheng stared once again out of the valley. He could only let out a bitter laugh and pray that Mu Chen would be all right. Otherwise, the people from the Northern Spiritual Academy would come find them and they would suffer. Bang bang. Inside the forest, the earth trembled. A giant red shadow with a violent atmosphere charged around in berserk. Many trees on the way were completely destroyed by it. Yet it did not care about it all right now. Its blood-red eyes were only focused on the nimble and tiny figure in front of it. This commotion naturally attracted the attention of some spiritual beasts inside the forest. However, the Conflagration Ape King had already reached the peak of the middle-rank spiritual beast. It is considered the top existence in the outskirts of the northern spiritual field. Therefore, these spiritual beasts were shocked by its ominous pressure and did not dare to approach. They only stared as the human and beast headed into the depths. "This damn beast, it really is tenacious." They fiercely ran for nearly 10 minutes, yet Mu Chen discovered that the Conflagration Ape King showed no traces of giving up. He could not help but curse at it. Swoosh! As he cursed, a powerful wind suddenly blew behind him. He noticed that the Conflagration Ape King picked up a large tree and threw it at him fiercely. His body hurriedly jumped forward and he spun a few times on the ground. Only through this way was he able to avoid the giant tree. When he was rolling across a cluster of weeds, he suddenly pulled out a batch of black grass and shoved it into his arms before bolting off again. While he was running away, Mu Chen's black eyes continuously flashed. He did not actively request to lure away the Conflagration Ape King because he wanted to show off his strength, rather it is because he had experience in it. In the spiritual road, he would often meet with this kind of situation. I should reach the inner part of the northern spiritual field soon. There should be spiritual beasts that could fight against this Conflagration Ape King. Since spiritual beasts have a powerful concept of territory, it would not let the Conflagration Ape King go that easily when they discovered it. When that happens, it would be a chance for me to escape from this guy. An idea flashed through Mu Chen's mind. He forced all of his spiritual energy out from his body and circulated the Great Pagoda art. Maybe it was because it was a situation of life and death, the Great Pagoda art's circulating speed became faster. Spiritual energy continued to flow endlessly into his four limbs and energized him. No matter how powerful the Great Pagoda art was, he was still only in the spiritual movement stage middle phase. His strength was too different compared to a middle-rank spiritual beast, whose strength had reached spiritual rotation stage late phase. Therefore, as the time passes on, Mu Chen gradually felt that he was getting weaker. Roar! Just when Mu Chen felt that the situation was getting pretty bad, a low howl came from a distant forest. It felt that this howl contained a sense of warning. It finally came. When Mu Chen heard this howl, joy filled his eyes. He accelerated and charged towards that distant forest. The moment he rushed into the forest, he quickly pulled out the black grass from within his arms and squeezed it using his palms. A repulsive black liquid flew out and covered his entire body. After Mu Chen finished doing this, a black shadow appeared from in front of him. Its eyes clearly showed that it did not notice the tiny human and it stared menacingly at the Conflagration Ape King, who was approaching. It's a one-horned panther dragon. Mu Chen looked at the figure and saw that it was like a black panther with a horn on its head. However, it was wearing an extremely hard carapace. It even had a steel thorn like crocodile's tail on its back. A surge of violent spiritual energy emitted from within its body. Mu Chen glanced at this one-horned panther dragon and frowned. This guy is also a middle-rank spiritual beast, but its strength was only in the spiritual rotation stage initial phase. The difference between it and the Conflagration Ape King was too great. Roar. The one-horned panther dragon kept a close eye at the approaching Conflagration Ape King, and it attempted to frighten it to retreat by using a threatening roar. But by this moment, the Conflagration Ape King's eyes had already turned completely red. It would shred anything to pieces if they dared to stop it from ripping apart Mu Chen. Because it saw that the one-horned panther dragon daring to stop him, he instantly issued out a fierce roar and his enormous body bounced up. Fiery red spiritual energy was formed under its beast palms and it fiercely smashed onto the one-horned panther dragon's waist like a meteorite. Boom! The earth was blasted apart and left an enormous hole. The surrounding trees were completely swept apart and destroyed. Then, Mu Chen witnessed in shock as the one-horned panther dragon let out a painful howl. Its entire waist was completely destroyed by the Conflagration Ape King's brutal blow. Even the carapace was completely shattered. What a vicious beast! Mu Chen could not help but breathe in cold air when he noticed that the one-horned panther dragon being killed in one attack from the Conflagration Ape King. This fellow sure can't take a hit, yet he was hoping that it could stall for some time. After the Conflagration Ape King killed the one-horned panther dragon, its blood-red eyes turned towards Mu Chen. The latter felt that it was pretty bad and was about to flee. However, an extremely furious roar came out from the depths of the forest. Roar! An amazing spiritual energy fluctuation was wrapped within the roar. Wind appeared where the roar passed by and Mu Chen's face instantly changed due to this spiritual energy pressure. A high-rank spiritual beast. The strength of a spirit stage. Boom! A silver shadow stormed out of the depths of the forest in berserk. After a few seconds, it appeared in this open space. Mu Chen hurriedly lowered his body and looked over. He saw that the silver shadow was actually exactly the same as the one-horned panther dragon. Aside from the fact that its body was larger, the horn on its head was a silver color. This is the high-rank spiritual beast, Silver Horned Panther Dragon. Mu Chen's heart jumped. He stared at the dead one-horned panther dragon before looking at the Silver Horned Panther Dragon, who was staring with hatred at the Conflagration Ape King. He finally understood. The Conflagration Ape King actually killed the Silver Horned Panther Dragon's child. Mu Chen quietly laid down on the ground. He painted his body with the pungent black liquid in order to cover his smell and held his breath. Then, he stared pitifully at the Conflagration Ape King. Buddy, it's over for you. Chapter 32 Spoils of War. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 32 Spoils of War. Deep inside the forest, a violent spiritual energy swept through like a fierce wind. Under this powerful spiritual energy, the entire forest became silent. In the distance, a few spiritual beasts desperately fled as they felt the rage from the Silver Horned Panther Dragon. The fury within the Conflagration Ape King's eyes subsided slightly under the spiritual energy's pressure. The ugly beast's face revealed a slight hint of fear. Although it had just reached the peak of a middle-rank spiritual beast, the Silver Horned Panther Dragon in front of it was a genuine high-rank spiritual beast. Conflagration Ape King's enormous body curled up slightly. It stared in fear at the Silver Horned Panther Dragon. The body showed traces of backing off and it was obvious that it planned on escaping. Roar! But the grieving Silver Horned Panther Dragon would not let this murderer escape that easily. Rage and ruthlessness filled its cold beast eyes. As its sharp claws slowly rubbed the ground, an extremely violent spiritual energy fluctuation emitted out from it constantly. Boom! The Conflagration Ape King suddenly turned around and ran. The fierceness it showed earlier as it chased Mu Chen had completely vanished. Under the threat of death, it was obvious that it had forgotten about Mu Chen. The Silver Horned Panther Dragon stared coldly at the escaping Conflagration Ape King, its massive body lowered slightly. In the next instant, spiritual energy flooded out like a waterfall and dazzling silver light completely wrapped around the silver, horned panther dragon. After a muffled sound, the silver, horned panther dragon turned into a silver streak of light as it darted forward. Swoosh! With a speed that the naked eye cannot perceive, the silver light pierced through the air. A sound of tearing rang out before Mu Chen was able to react. He turned his gaze over to that direction and noticed that the Conflagration Ape King had already stopped running. A 1-meter wide hole appeared on its back. The organs within its body had completely vanished as well. The silver, horned panther dragon shook its body lightly in front of the Conflagration Ape King. It flung away all the bloodstains on its body before it slowly walked back. Bang! The Conflagration Ape King's body collapsed onto the ground. Fresh blood continued to flow out, but it was obvious that it had died already. One hit. An instant kill. Mu Chen's heart jumped. He thought inside his mind. Is this the power of a high-rank spiritual beast? How terrifying. However, he remained motionless as he laid on the ground. He even minimized his breathing, and the spiritual energy, which was circulating within his body, returned back to his aura sea. If he was discovered by the silver, horned panther dragon, he probably wouldn't be much better off than the Conflagration Ape King. Luckily, the silver, horned panther dragon was not in a mood to search for a human like him. Instead, it walked beside the 1-horned panther dragon and pushed the corpse around. It issued out a lament howl and slowly walked back to the depths of the forest with its corpse. Mu Chen watched as the silver, horned panther dragon disappeared. He did not immediately stand up. Instead, he waited patiently for approximately 10 minutes before he carefully stood up. He stared vigilantly at his surroundings. Then, he hurried quickly to the Conflagration Ape King's corpse and used a dagger to cut its head apart. All of a sudden, a red light floated out. This was the Conflagration Ape King's soul essence. This fiery red light had a miniature dot-sized conflagration ape in it. A powerful spiritual energy fluctuation radiated from it. Mu Chen used his backhand to collect the Conflagration Ape King's soul essence. Then, he used the dagger and cut the Conflagration Ape King's head completely off. After this was done, he suddenly paused and pondered for a moment. Then, he walked to the place where the 1-horned panther dragon had died. A large puddle of thick red blood was at that spot. Mu Chen took out a bottle and carefully loaded the blood inside. Then, he placed it back within his arms and swiftly left this place. While Mu Chen got rid of his dilemma, a trouble also appeared within the valley. Roar, roar. The silence within the valley was completely shattered at this moment. Groups of giant red apes stared furiously at the humans within the depths of the valley. They picked up giant boulders and threw them fiercely at them. With their numbers, they managed to force everyone in the valley into a helpless position. Damn it, all of these beasts regained their consciousness. Lin Zhong and the others dodged the giant boulders helpless. They stared at the group of conflagration apes as they showed an exceeding ugly expression. After Mu Chen had lured away the Conflagration Ape King, they picked up the speed. However, they did not imagine that the Conflagration Apes would wake up in succession. Right now, they were stuck at this location due to them. What should we do? Tang Qianair, Mo Ling and the others had a pale expression. After all, their psychological qualities weren't as good as Lin Zhong and the others. This scene made their legs feel slightly weak. Prepare to charge out. Lei Ching said in a deep voice. He was carrying a bag behind him. Emerald lights continued to penetrate outwards from within the bag while a fragrance was released into the air. Lin Zhong, bring some people to take care of them. Don't let anything happen to them. Lei Ching said. After all, they were veterans and they had bountiful experience in this. However, Tang Qianair and the others were just rookies without any experience. If an accident occurs and they were caught among the group of conflagration apes, they would probably be ripped into shreds instantly. Yes. Lin Zhong and the others nodded. They did not make fun of these students, who had not guts. After all, the courage displayed by Mu Chen earlier when he lured away the Conflagration Ape King by himself was something that they were stunned about. They understood that they would have probably died today if it wasn't for Mu Chen's actions. Let's go. Lei Qing gripped onto his long blade and his eyes became serious. A powerful spiritual energy emitted out and he led the charge towards the Conflagration Apes. His blade flashed and he forcibly teared open a path. The Thunderstorm team followed closely. Tang Qian'er and the others were in the center and were protected by them. The group of people pushed their spiritual energy to the extreme and blade lights formed into a defensive line. It knocked back the Conflagration Apes that tried to lunge over. Bang bang bang. Although there was Lei Qing, a spiritual rotation stage initial phase powerhouse, who was leading the team, there were just too many Conflagration Apes. Therefore, some of the members of the Thunderstorm team were injured shortly after they charged out. However, they gritted their teeth and endured it as fresh blood constantly flowed down the arms holding the blade. Damn it! Lei Qing split a Conflagration Ape into half. However, he could only curse as numerous Conflagration Apes lunged over. He gradually started to panic. It seems that they would be buried within this valley today. Tang Qian'er, Mo Ling and the others stared at the vicious Conflagration Apes with a pale expression. However, the Conflagration Apes suddenly created a commotion when they felt despair within their hearts. The Conflagration Apes seemed to have noticed something terrifying and they retreated backwards while letting out fearful cries. What is this all about? Lei Qing and the others watched in astonishment at this scene. Not far away, they noticed a thin boy's figure suddenly jumping out. It's Mu Chen. Tang Qian'er and the others instantly became overjoyed and they noticed this familiar figure. They did not understand why, but the confidence that the latter gave far surpassed Lei Qing even when he wasn't as strong as Lei Qing. What is he holding in his hand? Lin Zhong and the others could see clearly. The thing that Mu Chen was holding on seemed to be the source of fear for the nearby Conflagration Apes. It's a head. Lei Qing was stunned. His eyes immediately showed an astounded expression and he cried. It's the head of the Conflagration Ape King. What? Lin Zhong and the others were startled. Horror began to fill their eyes. Did Mu Chen really kill the Conflagration Ape King? Hurry! Just as they were horrified, Mu Chen shouted at them. At the same time, he raised the head of the Conflagration Ape King and the nearby Conflagration Apes retreated backwards due to fear. In their eyes, the Conflagration Ape King was an extremely terrifying existence. Then, the one who killed the Conflagration Ape King, just how powerful would he? Without a sharp wisdom, they weren't able to think clearly about this. They could only rely on the fear that they felt from their instincts. Hurry and run. Lei Qing rejoiced and he quickly gestured with his hand. He led the crowd and accelerated to leave the Conflagration Ape siege. Finally, they made it to Mu Chen's side. As they approached, they were able to see clearly the ugly head that was constantly dripping blood. It was indeed the Conflagration Ape King's head. Lei Qing and the others exchanged gazes. They could see the shock within their eyes. How in the world did Mu Chen do it? Mu Chen did not care about their thoughts and led them out of the valley quickly. Then, he placed the head of the Conflagration Ape King outside of the valley and scared the Conflagration Apes, so that they did not dare to come out. The group of people turned around and rushed fiercely away. Only after they were far away from the valley, they fell down exhausted. Even Lei Qing was panting heavily and his body was covered with sweat. Mu Chen also sat down below a tree. It feels that his bones were about to shatter. It was quite frightening this time, he nearly died. Are you all right? Tang Qian'er walked beside Mu Chen. Her beautiful eyes stared at the boy. It was obvious that this person had given her many shocks today. I'm fine. Mu Chen smiled and he raised his head. He noticed that Lei Cheng and the others were all dumbfounded as they stared at him. It was evident that they had not recovered from the shock that Mu Chen had saved them using the head of the Conflagration Ape King. Stop staring. I was just lucky. I still don't have the strength to kill a Conflagration Ape King. Mu Chen shook his head helplessly. Then, he turned and looked at Lei Cheng as he smiled. However, Big Brother Lei Cheng, the task is finished. We should divide the spoils now, right? Haha. When Lei Cheng heard these words, he could not help but laugh. He lowered the bag behind him and spread it open. A dazzling emerald light flowed out instantly along with a thick fragrance, which made everybody's eyes lit up. Mu Chen also stared at the round and juicy jaded essence fruit inside the bag. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. At least he did not lose out after this tiring ordeal. Chapter 33 Returning to Camp. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 33 Returning to camp. The bag was spread out on the ground and a dazzling emerald light emitted from it. Every single colored jaded essence fruit was round and shiny. An irresistible aroma made all of them gulp as they stared feverishly at it. There's a total of 30 jaded essence fruits. Originally, we should have more of an harvest, but the Conflagration Ape King wasted many jaded essence fruit. Lei smiled and separated 15 of the jaded essence fruit. He said, "Little brother Mu Chen. Although you said that you would only take 30%, it was all thanks to you regarding about the matter today. You deserve these 15 jaded essence fruit. We cannot be greedy after all the work that you've done. We should just do 30% like we agreed upon." "Fine, then thank you, Big Brother Lei Cheng." Mu Chen shook his head. He was about to refuse, but he noticed the resolute expression that Lei Cheng had. He could only helplessly smile and did not act pretentious as he accepted the 15 jaded essence fruit. Then, he looked at Mo Ling and the others, who were staring at him, and said, "You guys worked hard as well. Let's have everybody take one jaded essence fruit, is that okay?" Hee hee. Mo Ling and the others could not help but grin. Even Zhongli and Ting Yong had emotional faces. As they obtained the jaded essence fruit from Mu Chen, their faces turned red as if they wanted to say something, but they didn't have the nerve to do so. Thus, they could only keep grinning. "Yo, you also have one." Mu Chen handed a jaded essence fruit to Tang Qian'er. The girl let off a sweet smile as she held on to the jaded essence fruit. When Mu Chen finished distributing the 15 jaded essence fruit, he still had 6 remaining in his hand. Even he could not endure it and grinned as he stared at the cold, jade-like jaded essence. With this jaded essence fruit, he should be able to condense the second limitless death seal, right? The group of people rested in the forest. Because they came back with fruitful results, every single one of them had a joyous expression. They also got closer with each other. Mo Ling and the others even took the opportunity to ask for guidance from the thunderstorm regarding about methods of hunting spiritual beast. Moreover, Lin Zhong and the others even shared some of the dangerous experiences they had in their adventures. As they were listening, Mo Ling and the others' eyes lit up as if they were extremely excited. Mu Chen watched the harmonious atmosphere and smiled. At this moment, Lei Cheng walked over with a bottle of hard liquor and thrusted it towards Mu Chen. He smiled and said, "How is it? Can you drink?" Mu Chen was not good with the item inside the bottle. However, he did not refuse and took a swig from it. The spicy feeling made the handsome boy's face turn red and he coughed a few times. "Don't drink that much." Seeing this, Tang Qian'er hurriedly patted Mu Chen's back and said reproachfully, "Oh ho ho, I've met many youths over all these years, but I've never met one as amazing as little brother Mu Chen. If you have time in the future, you can come play around with the Thunderstorm team." Lei Cheng joked as he said, "His father is the Mu territory's lord. Uncle Mu will not forgive you if you drag him in becoming an adventurer." Tang Qianair batted an eye towards Lei Cheng and said sourly. Mu Territory's lord. Lei Cheng was stunned. He immediately stared at Mu Chen in surprise. So little brother Mu Chen is the young master of the Mu Territory. It was an oversight. Oh ho ho, I've had once followed my big brother and met the Mu Territory's lord before. Truly, a wild goose will never lay a tame egg. Mu Chen glared at Tang Qianair as the girl stuck out her tongue. She only mentioned it because she did not think carefully about it. Little brother Mu Chen, we will stay at the northern spiritual field for a while. If you need any help, feel free to call us. This time, we owe you a favor. Lei Cheng said. Big brother Lei, there's no need to be this polite. Naturally, I would have to give it my all since we were cooperating. Mu Chen smiled and said. Cooperation is cooperation. However, it is also true that you've saved us, the Thunderstorm team. Lei Cheng said seriously. Mu Chen could only shake his head helplessly. However, he had a better opinion of this straightforward and burly man. After they chatted for a while, the color of the sky gradually darkened. When Mu Chen noticed this, he said farewells to the Thunderstorm team together with Tang Qianair and the others. Afterwards, they rushed towards the direction of the camp. Along the way, Mo Ling and the others were still immersed in excitement. Although they were in a dangerous situation today, the emotional moments after the danger made them extremely excited. They talked constantly about the fierce battle within the valley. Mu Chen did not feel anything about the excitement they were talking about. After all, he had experienced this many times within the spiritual road. Therefore, he was able to maintain a calm heart when facing this kind of situation. As there weren't many obstacles on the way back, they reached a location close to the camp after half an hour. The youths all let out a sigh of relief when they saw the camp out in the distance. Mu Chen stared in the direction of the camp and frowned. This is because a dozen figures were at the entrance of the forest. The leading figure was fairly familiar as it was Lu Yang and Chen Tong. It was clear that the people behind these smiling individuals were all West Branch students. It's Chen Tong and a few others. Mo Ling was startled when he noticed Lu Yang and the other students. His face immediately turned disgusted. Mu Chen, it seems that they are coming for you. Just when Mu Chen and the others discovered Chen Tong's group, the other group also noticed the group that was returning. A nasty expression appeared instantly in their faces and they intercepted Mu Chen and the others. Chen Tong, what are you guys doing? Mo Ling frowned when he noticed this. Oh, nothing. I only want to talk with him for a while. Mo Ling, this is unrelated to you, so you best not intervene, okay? If you offend Brother Lu, you'll have an unpleasant time as well. Chen Tong laughed. The Brother Lu that Chen Tong was talking about was obviously Lu Mubai. When Mo Ling heard this, his face changed slightly. It was obvious that he was afraid of Lu Mubai. Jiang Li, Teng Yong, the two of you can leave as well. I know that you bear grudges with Mu Chen, will help you vent off your feelings. Chen Tong stared as he spoke to Jiang Li and Teng Yong. He calculated it quite accurately. Aside from Tang Qianair, the other people weren't familiar with Mu Chen. Moreover, Jiang Li and Teng Yong both disliked Mu Chen, so they wouldn't help him for sure. However, just when he believed that he had calculated the situation accurately, Jiang Li and the others only stared at him coldly. They did not show any traces of leaving and instead let out a sneer. If you want to hurt Brother Mu, you have to ask us first. Although Jiang Li and Teng Yong disliked Mu Chen earlier, the matter today completely changed their opinions on him. Not only did Mu Chen rescue them, his actions in the valley completely made these prideful individuals respect him. The hatred they had against him had vanished already. Therefore, they did not feel the slightest psychological burden when they called him Brother Mu. You. Chen Tong and the others were stunned. Their faces instantly turned grim as they stared malevolently at Mo Ling and the others, who were protecting Mu Chen. They felt incredulously. Why would these old students be that protective of an East Branch Heaven-class newcomer? Mu Chen watched the scene undisturbed and did not say anything. He only patted Jiang Li and the others' shoulders and said, "Let's leave." He did not say anything towards Chen Tong and Lu Yang. This ignoring attitude made Chen Tong's face become disgusted. He let out a low cry. "You want to leave? You're acting too arrogant." His hand stretched straight out towards Mu Chen's collar as soon as he said those words. Swoosh! However, when he took action towards Mu Chen, a cold chill passed through Mu Chen's eyes. Mu Chen turned his hand around and a black light flashed. Before Chen Tong's hands touched his collar, a bloody dark dagger already appeared next to Chen Tong's throat. The coldness coming from his throat made Chen Tong's pupil contract violently. He shuddered and gritted his teeth as he said, "What do you want? You don't believe that I'll kill you?" Mu Chen said softly as he looked at Chen Tong. Although Mu Chen's words were light, Chen Tong and the others all felt a bone-chilling cold. This was a true killing intent. The youths behind Chen Tong were stunned by the emotionless black eyes of Mu Chen. They were afraid and did not dare to speak. "What are you doing?" A deep voice broke the silence and many youths hurriedly looked over. They saw Teacher Mo staring severely at them nearby. "Teacher Mo." Mo Ling and the others immediately bowed when they noticed him. When Mu Chen saw that Teacher Mo, he withdrew his dagger. A gentle smile reappeared on his handsome face. "When you look at him, it seems that he was harmless." "Teacher Mo, Mu Chen wanted to kill me." Chen Tong stared at Mu Chen with a flushed face. "You really believe that I didn't see it at all?" Teacher Mo glanced at Chen Tong as he said faintly. Chen Tong was startled and he bitterly touched his nose. Then, he glared fiercely at Mu Chen and brought everyone away with a depressed expression. "All of you should return back to the camp as well." Teacher Mo said this towards Mo Ling, Tang Qianer and the others. The latter hesitated for a moment before leaving one after another. After seeing them leave, Teacher Mo walked towards Mu Chen. He could not help but shake his head as he stared at the boy's gentle face. He said, "Boy, you really dare do such a dangerous thing with an adventurers team. Teacher Mo, you know what we did?" Mu Chen was slightly stunned as he asked. "After Tan Qing Shan returned and informed me, I rushed over immediately. However, I did not show up, but I've witnessed your actions." Teacher Mo stared at Mu Chen while he was slightly overwhelmed. He originally planned on saving Mu Chen when he noticed Mu Chen luring away the Conflagration Ape King. However, who would have expected that the boy would actually lure out a silver, horned panther dragon? This act of rousing the tiger to eat the wolf even made him sigh with amazement. So Teacher Mo was secretly protecting me. If I knew that earlier, I wouldn't need to be hunted down that helplessly. Mu Chen said helplessly. If they knew that a spirit stage powerhouse was protecting him in secret, just who would be willing to run around the forest while being chased? "Boy, you." Teacher Mo smiled as he shook his head. He knew that Mu Chen was quite cautious even though he was still quite young. He must have cooperated with the Thunderstorm team because he was convinced that the other side would not dare do anything wicked to them. "Forget it, it's great that you're back. Let's head back to the camp first." Teacher Mo waved his hand and turned around towards the camp. Mu Chen followed him with a smile. The two of them passed through the forest and entered the camp. Mu Chen immediately swept a glance around the camp when he entered. He suddenly stared at the dozen burly figures near the camp. The powerful and ominous aura that came from the figures showed that they were any ordinary individuals. "This is..." Teacher Mo also frowned as he stared at the unfamiliar team. Then, he noticed the badge on these men's chests and muttered. "It's the people from the Lu territory. What are they planning to do by coming here?" Chapter 34. Lu Ming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A group of strangers appearing within the camp would naturally attract the gazes of many students. However, none of them dared to approach. The ominous aura that emitted from their bodies made the young boys and girls slightly afraid. The people from the Lu territory. Mu Chen frowned as he stared at these unfamiliar men. Why did these individuals run over to the northern spiritual field? It was obvious that Teacher Mo was also puzzled. He slowly walked towards the group and a middle-aged man stepped forward. He cupped his hands as he smiled and said, "Surely, this must be the Northern Spiritual Academy's Teacher Mo Lu Territories Lu Ming. I apologize for coming here uninvited, but I hope you will forgive me." "Oh, so it's the third master of the Lu Territory, Lu Ming." Teacher Mo let out a faint smile when he heard those words. "How could I allow Teacher Mo call me like this? That's only a rumor caused by outsiders." The middle-aged man hurriedly shook his head and maintained a low profile. "Lu Ming. The third master of the Lu Territory, huh?" Behind Teacher Mo, Mu Chen glanced at the middle-aged man again. The latter was slightly skinny, yet he seemed strong. Moreover, he had a pair of claw-like hands. At this moment, the skinny face was filled with smiles. Mu Chen wasn't unfamiliar with the name, Lu Ming. He had often heard it from his father and Uncle Zhou. This person was the younger twin brother of the Lu Territory's territory lord, Lu Qingtian, and was also the right-hand man for him. His strength had already reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase and was only a step away from reaching the spirit stage. Furthermore, he was considered a relatively well-known figure within the northern spiritual realm. "You guys are..." Teacher Mo stared at the group led by Lu Ming, which did not fit with the atmosphere around the camp. He had a slightly unhappy expression. After all, this place was a training location for the students. With these ominous people around here, it might disturb the students' training. "Teacher Mo, my third uncle is currently on a mission. He noticed that Lu Yang and I were here, so he came over to see us. He did not intend to disturb us." Behind Lu Ming, Lu Mubai gave a slight smile as he spoke. "Mission." Lu Ming sighed. "We, the Lu Territory, had an important item that was stolen by the Blood Slaughter Group while we were transporting it back. Although we, the Lu Territory, managed to encircle them and annihilate them, the captain of the Blood Slaughter Group, Xue Tu, still escaped. He fled into the northern spiritual field under our chase, so we came here this time to capture him." Xue Tuesday. Hearing this name, Teacher Mo frowned. He was an extremely ruthlessly individual within the northern spiritual realm. It was unknown how many lives died in his hands. If this wicked individual entered the northern spiritual realm, wouldn't it be a threat to the students training here? The other law-abiding adventure teams and adventurers would fear the Northern Spiritual Academy. Thus, they would not dare do anything overboard to these students. However, this wicked individual would not hesitate at all. As long as they made him unhappy, he would kill without hesitation. "Oh ho ho, yes. This time, we came over here because we wanted to inform Teacher Mo as well. Try and allow the students to be more careful, so that nothing unpleasant would occur. After all, everybody knows how crazy that person is." As Mu Chen was standing beside Teacher Mo, he naturally heard this and was a little surprised. Obviously, he had heard of the name Blood Slaughter Group before. It was an extremely vicious name. However, these individuals weren't idiots. Why would they dare to trouble the Lu Territory? It seems that those people stole something amazing from them. Otherwise, why would the Lu Territory be so angry? Not only did they massacre the Blood Slaughter Group, they even caused Xue Tu to flee to this place. Third Master Lu, what item did the Blood Slaughter Group steal from the Lu Territory? You would actually mobilize this many troops for it? Mu Chen's eyes flashed. He suddenly asked as if he was naive. This kind of stupid question startled Lu Ming. He let out a dry chuckle and said, "Little brother, I can't tell you this. Mu Chen smiled slightly. Within his heart, he understood just how important that the item stolen by Xue Tu is. Mu Chen, this matter is unrelated to your Mu territory. Lu Mubai glanced at Mu Chen and said. Mu Chen. When Lu Ming heard this name, he was stunned. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Mu Chen and said. So you're Mu Feng's son. The only one who obtained the qualifications for the spiritual road within the northern spiritual realm. Mu Chen smiled as he nodded. There were many disputes between the Lu territory and the Mu territory. It could be said that they were enemies. Therefore, he was not surprised by Lu Ming's reaction. Oh ho ho, I have heard of your name a long time ago. Originally, I thought that the spot for the spiritual road would belong to Mubai. Lu Ming let out a faint chuckle and said this out. Mu Chen smiled, but he did not respond. Thank you for informing us about the matter of Xue Tu, we will be careful. Seeing that Lu Ming's words have a sting in them, Teacher Mo frowned. Lu Ming was ultimately a well-known figure within the northern spiritual realm, how could he speak so rudely to a young boy? Teacher Mo, we wanted to rest in the camp tonight, so we hope that Teacher Mo will accept it. Oh ho ho, although Teacher she had already accepted it, I still feel that it is necessary that Teacher Mo accepts it as well. Of course, we will take care of protecting the camp tonight and guarantee that nothing will happen. Lu Ming quickly said. When Teacher Mo heard this, he pondered for a moment. Since Teacher she had already accepted it, then it wouldn't be quite honorable if he refused. He immediately nodded and brought Lu Ming to arrange a place. I heard from Chen Tong earlier that you wanted to kill him. Seeing that Mu Chen was planning to leave, Lu Mubai suddenly called out faintly. Mu Chen tilted his head and glanced at Lu Mubai for a moment. He smiled and said. To those individuals that come to trouble me, I don't know how to be merciful to them. If you enjoy that, you can come at me by yourself. But if you allow those dogs of yours to come over again, I do not mind teaching them a lesson. Lu Mubai stared coldly at Mu Chen as Mu Chen smiled and exchanged gazes with him. If I have the chance, I will personally test out how powerful you, a person who qualified for the spiritual road, are. I hope that you would not disappoint me. Lu Mubai stared deeply at Mu Chen. Then, he left without saying any more. When Mu Chen saw this, he smiled as well. Then, he turned around and headed to the camp for the East Branch students. Seeing him walk over, Tang Qianer pouted her lips and said. Those fellows from the Lu territory, what is there to be proud of now? They still act this arrogant when their item was stolen. She had always been looking over there. Thus, she was slightly unhappy when she heard the stingy words from Lu Ming and Lu Mubai. Since they are unhappy, they needed somewhere to vent off their feelings. Mu Chen smiled and beckoned Tan Qingshan to come over. After he walked over, he quietly thrusted a jaded essence fruit into his hands. This is the payment for passing on the message. Mu Chen patted Tan Qingshan's shoulder while he was in a daze. This really for me. Tan Qingshan's face turned red because he was emotional. When they came back, Mo Ling and the others talked about the events in the valley to him. Naturally, Tan Qingshan became envious when they were all holding a jaded essence fruit. However, he knew that Mo Ling and the others worked hard for it, so that is why they obtained it. He could only blame his own strength as he could not go with them. His family environment wasn't that good. He could not afford a spirit fruit like the jaded essence fruit. The jaded essence fruit that Mu Chen gave him would be able to save a lot of time for training. If you did not pass back the message, we would not have the confidence to follow them and do the task with them. Mu Chen smiled and said. Brother Mu, thank you. Tan Qingshan held on to the jaded essence fruit and said in an appreciative voice. Go train well now. Mu Chen shook his head. Afterwards, he headed towards his own tent. Right now, he was left with 5 jaded essence fruits. With such sufficient preparations, he should be able to condense the second seal of the Limitless Death Seal this time, right? When he thought about this, even with his calmness, Mu Chen could not help but be excited about it. Night gradually enveloped the northern spiritual field. As the color of the sky darkened, the camp became bright again and was extremely lively. However, Mu Chen did not go out. Instead, he sat quietly within his tent with his eyes closed. He circulated the great pagoda art and dark black lights glowed on the surface of his body. This quiet training lasted for approximately 30 minutes. Then, Mu Chen opened his eyes suddenly and pulled out a round jaded essence fruit from his arms. Under the faint firelight, the jaded essence fruit's bright reflection was extremely enchanting. Mu Chen licked his mouth. Then, he opened his mouth and directly shoved the jaded essence fruit into this mouth. Next up, it was finally the time to condense the second seal for the Limitless Death Seal. Chapter 35 The Second Limitless Death Seal. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 35 The Second Limitless Death Seal. Hong. The jaded essence fruit instantly dissolved when it entered Mu Chen's mouth and a thick, sweet taste spread out within. Next, pure spiritual energy flowed out like water and infused into Mu Chen's body. The spiritual energy was extremely powerful. Thus, he pursed his lips as the spiritual energy caused Mu Chen's body to tremble slightly. Without the slightest hesitation, Mu Chen overlapped his 10 fingers and swiftly changed between complicated seals. As his seals changed, a rich spiritual energy began to condense in the center of his palms. Mu Chen had always been attempting to form the second Limitless Death Seal for a while now. Although he had never succeeded, it still allowed him to get increasingly skilled in the condensation method. Permeated with black lights, the dark black spiritual energy nearly wrapped around Mu Chen's arms completely. The density of the spiritual energy was not something that Mu Chen would normally able to achieve. Mu Chen's eyes were fixed on the spiritual energy condensing at the center of his palm. The black light seemed to form a whirlpool and it devoured the surrounding spiritual energy endlessly. He was completely focused on it and did not dare to be distracted at all. After all, when he attempted to condense one normally, he would use the spiritual energy that he could control. Even if it failed, it would not cause much damage to him. However, the situation right now was completely different. The spiritual energy that came from the jaded essence fruit made the spiritual energy within Mu Chen's body reach a considerably dense level. If he fails, the backlash from the spiritual energy would probably be quite troublesome for Mu Chen. Buzz. As Mu Chen concentrated, the black lights condensed more rapidly. It was possible to see a black light to slowly condense into the shape of a black light seal. All of you, go in. Mu Chen let out a cry within his heart and activated the spiritual energy within his body with all his strength. It flowed endlessly into the black light seal. The speed of the black light extending increased again. Approximately a minute later, the black light quietly retracted and a black light seal appeared above the center of Mu Chen's left hand. He finally condensed the second Limitless Death Seal. Mu Chen stared at the Limitless Death Seal floating above the center of his palm, but he did not relax. Instead, his eyes became increasingly serious because he knew that succeeding in forming the Limitless Death Seal was only the first step. Next up, he must absorb this second limitless death into his body. But when this limitless death seal enters his body, it would burst out an extremely powerful force. If he was not careful, the meridians within his body would be destroyed. Mu Chen had already suffered from the powerful backlash from the limitless death seal when he formed the first one. He understood that the backlash would only be more terrifying when he formed more of them. Even someone like Teacher Mo, who was at the spirit stage level, could not form the third limitless death seal. Although the power of the backlash would increase based on the practitioner's own strength, he was still able to differentiate just how powerful the backlash would be. Hu! Mu Chen took a deep breath and the spiritual energy within his aura sea began to surge out. It formed a protective membrane around the meridians as it prepared for the violent impact. When the inside of his body was fully prepared, Mu Chen did not hesitate and the second limitless death seal imprinted itself onto Mu Chen's left palm. Bang! The moment that it touched Mu Chen's palm, his body trembled suddenly. Then, the color of his face changed as a violent impact surged forward through his meridians like a raging flood from his left palm. The power of the impact was filled with destructiveness. Along the way, the spiritual energy membrane was smashed instantly and his meridians could not endure the impact. It became slightly distorted and a terrible pain came from it. Cold sweat appeared at Mu Chen's forehead. However, he did not dare to get distracted. He hurriedly mobilized his spiritual energy and contained it again. Bang bang bang. Mu Chen's body seems to have turned into a battlefield. The backlash from the limitless death seal destroyed the many defenses and wreaked havoc within his body. The pain made Mu Chen's body twitch slightly. Damn it! The pain had twisted Mu Chen's face a bit. He gritted his teeth and cursed loudly as he struggled to resist it. If he fails to withstand it now, then his hard work would be wasted. Moreover, he would suffer a grave injury within his body. A terrible pain constantly emitted out from his meridians. Mu Chen was completely drenched in cold sweat and he was slightly dizzy from the pain. Only at this moment did he truly understand how difficult it was to form the second limitless death seal. The power of the backlash had already break through the outer meridians and it charged straight towards Mu Chen's aura C without stopping. This made Mu Chen's heart turn cold. If his meridians were injured, he could still restore them. However, if his aura C was destroyed, it would definitely be so painful that he would want to die. Stop. When Mu Chen thought about this, even he couldn't remain calm and he let out an angry roar within his heart. Buzz. When the low cry rumbled within his body, he noticed that a few lights lit up within his body. These lights were distributed throughout Mu Chen's limbs and seemed quite peculiar. As these lights appeared, Mu Chen felt that an energy gushing out from his body and it collided with the raging impact directly. Boom! A sound of bombardment rang out within his body and buzzed within Mu Chen's ears. He only managed to recover after a while. When he recovered, the first thing that he did was to sense within his body. However, he was startled. Because he discovered that the raging backlash was actually blocked. How could this be? Mu Chen muttered at a loss. He stared in his mind at the fading lights within his body. Could this really be a spiritual pulse? But why couldn't he control it or even just sense it? After thinking for a while, he could not think of any reason why and he could only let out a bitter laugh. It seems that there was some sort of secret within his body. Mu Chen suppressed these thoughts within his heart and circulated the great pagoda art. He gathered the spiritual energy that was spread throughout his limbs into his aura C. However, after the spiritual energy entered his aura C, he could feel that the originally quiet spiritual energy began to rumble. A strange fluctuation rumbled within Mu Chen's heart. When he sensed this fluctuation, Mu Chen was stunned. Then, a pleasant surprise could not be concealed as it gushed out from his heart. This is a sign of the spiritual energy making a breakthrough. Mu Chen opened his eyes in surprise. He immediately pulled out another jaded essence fruit and shoved it into his mouth. Then, he circulated the great pagoda art and refined the warm and cool spiritual energy. It eventually turned into a dark black spiritual energy as it endlessly entered his aura C. The two spiritual energies quickly converged together and a joyous cry rang out within Mu Chen's aura C. As this joyous cry rang out, Mu Chen was able to feel the spiritual energy within his body becoming denser rapidly. This increase lasted for quite a while before it stopped. The star cluster like dark black spiritual energy within Mu Chen's body seemed to have doubled compared to before. Inside the tent, Mu Chen opened his eyes and his handsome face was filled with joy. He stretched out his hands and a dark seal flickered within both his palms. He succeeded in forming the second limitless death seal. Mu Chen grinned and clenched his hands tightly. Not only did he condense the second limitless death seal, he even took advantage of this opportunity and broke through again. He advanced to the spiritual movement stage late phase. Sensing that the spiritual energy within his body had become denser, Mu Chen could not help but smile. Tonight's harvest had far surpassed his own expectations. Just when Mu Chen was delighted due to his breakthrough, Teacher Mo also opened his eyes in another tent. His eyes stared in surprise in the direction of Mu Chen's tent and he immediately smiled. This little guy is truly impressive. Chapter 36 Predicament. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 36 Predicament. The following day, the camp, once again, became lively. Many boys and girls surrounded each other excitedly as they talked about their harvests of yesterday. Sounds of laughter from the girls echoed in the camp. It was filled with youthful vitality. The people from the Lu territory, led by Lu Ming, had temporarily left in the early morning. They probably went to search for traces of Shui Tuesday. Without the existence of these individuals, the camp's atmosphere relaxed. After all, these boys and girls had some resistance towards these ominous individuals. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi did not stop the training because of Shui Tuesday. However, they reminded the students to not venture in too deep and to not be too dispersed. Let's go, we should also set off. Mu Chen gestured towards Tang Qian'er and she trotted over. The curvy, slender petite body attracted many boys' gazes and they stared jealously towards Mu Chen. This guy was really lucky since he was able to form a team with Tang Qian'er. Brother Mu, are you going out for training again? Don't lose to us. Jiang Li and Ting Yong greeted Mu Chen when they noticed him. You want to defeat us as well, dream on. Tang Qian'er said in a sweet voice. If anything happens feel free to call us, Brother Mu. If anyone wants to trouble you, we're not afraid of them. Jiang Li and Ting Yong laughed as they talked. Beside them, the East Branch students that had accompanied Mu Chen yesterday to perform the task hurriedly nodded. Mu Chen waved at them with a smile. Without saying anything more, he brought Tang Qian'er away from the camp and headed to the northern spiritual field. Within the camp, Lu Mubai stared at the disappearing figure. A hint of coldness that was hard to detect flashed through his eyes. Boom! Within the forest, Mu Chen's hand shot off as dark black spiritual energy surged out from his palms. He darted past a low-rank spiritual beast, whose strength was at the spiritual movement stage middle phase, and directly knocked it a dozen meters away. The spiritual beast could only whine as it landed on the ground. Behind him, Tang Qian'er watched this scene and was startled. Although Mu Chen could kill a low-rank spiritual beast with this level of strength yesterday, he could not kill it using such a brutal method like he showed today. Your strength? Tang Qian'er could not help but ask. Thanks to the jaded essence fruit, I managed to break through to the spiritual movement stage late phase yesterday night. Mu Chen crouched down and obtained the spiritual beast's soul essence as he explained. Crazy. When Tang Qian'er heard this, she suddenly muttered this cry. However, she immediately lifted her face and proudly said. I will also reach the spiritual movement stage late phase within 5 days. Amazing. Mu Chen smiled and raised his thumb. Then, he continued heading to the depths of the forest. Let's go, it's your turn next. You're not allowed to be lazy, otherwise it won't be beneficial to your training. I know. Tang Qian'er replied as she quickly followed him while she smiled. At the west side of the northern spiritual field, a dozen shadows were searching vigilantly. Lu Mubai was also within this group. With his position and strength, it was obvious that he was capable to lead a team by himself. From Lu Ming, he understood just how important the item that Shui Tu had stolen was to the Lu territory. The Lu territory had paid a great price in order to obtain it. Therefore, they must capture Shui Tu and obtain the item back regardless of the cost. Little Master, we detected traces of that Shui Tu earlier. However, that guy is extremely cunning, he slipped away from our team again. An expert from the Lu territory reported to Lu Mubai. Continue to search. Lu Mubai nodded his head and said a command. Yes. That team immediately replied and brought its men to increase the search radius. This search lasted for half an hour. Just when Lu Mubai frowned, a buzzing sound rang out in front. It was a signal sent out by the Lu territory's men. They found him, let's go. Lu Mubai's eye lit up. He gestured with his hand and his body charged forward. When his body passed through the forest, a man covered with blood rushed towards him awkwardly. From his appearance, it seems that he was a person from the Lu territory. Where's Xue Tuesday? Lu Mubai hurried and asked as he stared at that person. Little master, Xue Tu fled towards the north. Should we immediately notify the third master? The expert from the Lu territory replied. The north. Lu Mubai's eyes flashed when he heard this. He waved his hands and said. Wait for a moment. Big brother. Why should we wait? Lu Yang asked as he was puzzled. If they waited, what would they do if Xue Tu escaped? He can't escape. We already forced Xue Tu into a dead end. Lu Mubai smiled dainty and said. Right now, he is only a caged beast. He will die eventually. However, we should let him vent off his frustration on some unlucky fellows before we let him die. Big brother, you mean? Lu Yang was confused. Mu Chen is in that direction. Lu Mubai laughed softly. Oh. When Lu Yang heard this, a hint of excitement flashed through his eyes. However, he immediately frowned again and said. We can't guarantee that Xue Tu would attack Mu Chen. Xue Tu is fond of girls. Since a beauty like Tang Qian'er is beside Mu Chen, he wouldn't be able to endure it. With Mu Chen's personality, he would not throw aside Tang Qian'er and escape by himself, so Lu Mubai smiled, but this smile was filled with a cold chill. Huh, big brother sure is thoughtful. If Mu Chen dies at the hands of Xue Tu, others can't complain at all and can only consider him as unlucky. Lu Yang said excitedly. He knew how vicious that Xue Tu is. If Mu Chen fell into his hands, he would definitely die. Lu Mubai only smiled and muttered as he stared at the north. I originally planned on taking care of him by myself, but it seems that he is fortunate enough. Oi, Mu Chen. Hurry and help, this guy's strength is at the spiritual movement stage late phase, I can't win. Within the forest, Tang Qian'er hurriedly avoided a ferocious spiritual beast, which lunged towards her. Her black ponytail danced as she let out a cry from time to time. Standing on a branch, Mu Chen stared at the figure below who was constantly dodging the spiritual movement stage late phase spiritual beast. He could not help but smile as he swept down like a wild goose. His right hand formed a fist as a dark black light condensed itself within his palm and formed a black light seal. Stop being so savage, you beast. Mu Chen dashed out while revealing a slight smile. The black light seal carried a tremendous fluctuation as it fiercely bombarded the spiritual beast. Boom! The spiritual beast let out an angry roar and its huge claws filled itself with spiritual energy. It violently smashed it against Mu Chen's fist. The spiritual energy impact exploded and swept the surrounding leaves away. A low growl came out from the spiritual beast as it was actually pushed back by Mu Chen forcibly. Shua! When the spiritual beast was still unstable, Mu Chen's body moved and he darted towards the spiritual beast again. His hand flashed and a dagger appeared within it. The spiritual energy wrapped around the dagger and brought forth an extremely sharp light as it stabbed fiercely into the spiritual beast's throat. Dong! Hot blood squirted out from the spiritual beast. Even the earth trembled slightly when the spiritual beast crashed onto the ground. Mu Chen smiled as he wiped the blood away from his dagger. The boy's tall body was quite attractive as it was bathed by the warm sunlight that penetrated through the forest. What an irritating guy. He doesn't know how to be kind to woman and let me be chaste for so long. Tang Qian'er said bitterly before she walked towards the spiritual beast. She pulled out a short sword and stabbed it into the beast's head. While she tried to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence, she was still chattering about Mu Chen's crimes. Mu Chen stared at her and could not help but smile. But just when he wanted to say something, his face changed and he darted forward. He wrapped his arms around Tang Qian'er's waist as she was about to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence. The two of them tumbled away. And just when Mu Chen grabbed onto Tang Qian'er and charged away, a bloody shadow charged out suddenly from the forest. The hands that were originally planning to hold on to Tang Qian'er missed and it let out a surprised sound. Mu Chen held on to Tang Qian'er as they rolled on the ground. Then, he quickly got up and stared in alert at the figure that appeared. His eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing the corpse of the spiritual beast in the open space, the figure stood up. He was wearing a blood-red robe and his face was extremely vicious. Craftiness flashed within his narrow eyes. That boy actually has quite the skill. The blood shadow stared at Mu Chen and let out a strange laugh. Then, his eyes landed on the girl who was behind Mu Chen. The girl had a soft, slender body. Her chest was quite bountiful and she had a waist that could be held within one arm. The youthful and energetic taste of hers made him lick his mouth. I never expected to find such an outstanding item over here. The blood shadow smiled and said. The eyes that stared at Tang Qian'er made it seem that he wanted to swallow her into his stomach. This made the young girl tremble and she hid her body behind Mu Chen. Boy, hand her over to me and I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll let you experience some of my methods. The blood shadow smiled and he stared at Mu Chen like a viper. Mu Chen kept a close eye at the blood shadow in front of him. Cold sweat appeared on the palm that held on to Tang Qian'er's hand. If he did not guess incorrectly, the guy in front of him must be the captain of the blood slaughter group, Xue Tu, whom Lu Ming and the others were chasing. He never thought that he would meet with this murderer here. This time, he really was in trouble. Chapter 37 Setting a Trap. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 37, Setting a Trap. In the open space of the forest, the three figures faced each other. The atmosphere made one feel slightly suffocated. Of course, this was only to Tang Qian'er, who was behind Mu Chen. Xue Tu's smile and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness and coldness. Mu Chen vigilantly stared at him while the spiritual energy within his body rushed out. This Xue Tu seemed to give him a dangerous feeling. The degree of danger seemed to be far beyond the Conflagration Ape King that he met yesterday. Whether it is in strength or in wisdom, the Conflagration Ape King cannot compare with Xue Tuesday. The Conflagration Ape King had only just broke through to the spiritual rotation stage late phase, but Xue Tu, on the other hand, had almost stepped into the spirit stage. Boy, I don't have much time to play this game of confrontation with you. You have 10 seconds to decide. If you hand her over, I'll let you live. Xue Tu said this again as he stared at Mu Chen with a smile. You aren't afraid of attracting the two spirit stage instructors from the Northern Spiritual Academy if you attack us here. Mu Chen said slowly. You're running out of time. Xue Tu grinned and his pure white teeth made the other people shudder. Mu Chen took a deep breath and tilted his head to stare at Tang Qian'er. Then, he grabbed onto her smooth wrist and shoved her over towards Xue Tuesday. At least you understand, boy. When Xue Tu noticed this, his smile became more brilliant. Mu Chen furiously circulated the spiritual energy in his arms and immediately took a step forward. He directly used the back of his hand and smashed towards Tang Qian'er's shoulder. This powerful impact blew her away. If you don't want to hurt me, then leave. After Tang Qian'er was blown away, Mu Chen's shout quickly followed. When Tang Qian'er fell into the forest, her beautiful eyes stared at the tall boy's figure and her eyes became wet by the fog. She suppressed her foolish thought of not casting him aside as she turned and ran. You think you can get away? Xue Tu stared coldly at this scene. These two spiritual movement stage brats actually were so naive that they thought they could escape him. Boy, I'll let you taste what is called a living death later on. Xue Tu smiled and his body darted over. However, he did not charge towards Mu Chen, but rather to Tang Qian'er, who was escaping to the outside of the forest. When Mu Chen noticed this, he also lunged over. However, Xue Tu completely ignored his lunge. Spirit Destruction Bead. Just when he planned on ignoring Mu Chen's charge, Xue Tu noticed that the boy suddenly grasped something within his hand. A light seemed to appear within his hand and a violent sound rang out. Spirit Destruction Bead. Hearing this name, Xue Tu's heart trembled. Although Mu Chen, who was in front of him, was pretty weak, it was definitely possible that he could obstruct him, if he had a Spirit Destruction Bead. Moreover, if the Spirit Destruction Bead was to hit him, it would probably cause some degree of injury. This was something that Xue Tu could not afford to suffer while he was surrounded. Xue Tu's eyes flashed and eventually stopped. He stared at the powerful and sudden mass of black light and let out a cry, as vigorous spiritual energy erupted out and enveloped his body. Crack! The instant that the black light was about to touch his body, it suddenly burst open. Unexpectedly, the violent spiritual energy did not appear. Instead, a strong stench suddenly presented itself. A sticky item burst out from the black light and covered Xue Tu's body. This sudden turn of events completely stunned Xue Tuesday. He lowered his head and stared at his body covered with blood. The fresh blood was quite viscous and had a pungent smell. It completely bathed his body and made him look extremely awkward. Did you dare trick me? The corner of Xue Tu's mouth twitched slightly. A chill exploded out from his eyes as he stared at Mu Chen. However, Mu Chen ignored him and instantly retreated. Boy, since you want to let her get away this much, then I won't let that wish of yours happen. Although Xue Tu was extremely angry due to Mu Chen's act, he was still a sinister and ruthless individual. He immediately let out an eerie laugh. Trash, do you want this thing? When Mu Chen noticed that he actually refrained his anger and wanted to capture Tang Qian'er, he smiled instead. Then, he pulled out an emerald, round fruit that emitted a rich spiritual energy from his arm. Jaded Essence Fruit. When Xue Tu noticed this jaded essence fruit, his eyes narrowed. Greediness appeared within his eyes. He was currently at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage and was only a step away from advancing to the spirit stage. If he was able to obtain the jaded essence fruit, he would be able to take a risk. Furthermore, if he really succeeded in his breakthrough, he would be able to successfully get rid of Lu Ming and escape. He would be able to break out of this dilemma. You're a really surprising boy, now I have some interest in you. Xue Tu grinned. His eyes instantly turned cold and turned his body over. He darted furiously towards Mu Chen. Compared to letting go of a beauty temporarily, it was worth it if he manages to break through to the spirit stage. Mu Chen seemed to have expected this reaction from him. Within his body, the spiritual energy gushed out and wrapped around his legs. He seemed to have pushed his speed to the limits as he fled in madness towards the depth of the forest. With Tang Qian'er's speed, it would probably take some time before she would manage to notify Teacher Mo. During this time period, he must ensure that he survives against Xue Tu, who is at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage late phase. With Xue Tu's strength, it was extremely easy to kill him. Boy, you really believe that you can escape? You would actually use your own life to lure me over for just a little girl. Oh ho ho, to be honest, I respect you quite a bit. How about this? If you were to hand the jaded essence fruit over, I would only break your limbs and let you survive. What do you think? Xue Tu chased after the desperately escaping figure. A strange cackle sound rang out constantly. Plaything of a homeless cur, you should take care of yourself instead. Mu Chen did not look back and instead sneered at him. You really don't know how to appreciate other people's favors. Xue Tu's eyes turned cold. His spiritual energy stormed out and his speed suddenly accelerated. The distance between Mu Chen's figure and him was quickly shortening. Mu Chen could feel the chill coming closer and closer behind him. His heart sank slightly. In the end, he still underestimated Xue Tu's strength. However, if he were to relax even the slightest bit, he would probably die at the hands of this guy. Mu Chen gritted his teeth and a low roar seemed to erupt within his heart. His spiritual energy circulated at a high speed through his meridians. Perhaps they were aware that Mu Chen was in a situation of life and death. The hidden lights within the depths of his body slowly lit up again. The lights emerged one after another. If Mu Chen were to observe the inside of his body with his mind right now, he would discover that the lights were connecting and forming something similar to a mysterious tower. Boom! Unfortunately, Mu Chen did not have the time to split up his mind right now. He could only feel the spiritual energy suddenly become a lot violent and his speed also accelerated. He was actually able to pull a little bit of distance away from Xue Tuesday. What? This boy's speed is actually this fast. When Xue Tu noticed this, he was stunned. Then, he frowned again and immediately circulated his spiritual energy as he hurriedly chased after Mu Chen. After all, he had extraordinary eyesight that surpassed others. Mu Chen's sudden explosiveness should only be temporarily and could not compare to his endurance. Within the forest, one of them was chasing while the other was fleeing. As they passed through, the leaves on the ground were swept clean as if a tornado had passed. Under this extreme speed, Mu Chen and Xue Tu quickly reached the depths of the northern spiritual field. Xue Tu looked in this direction and was slightly impatient. After all, there were quite a bit of tricky spiritual beasts at this place and it was easy for the situation to change. Boy, I had enough of you. Xue Tu fiercely gritted his teeth. He did not care if he had to expend a lot of spiritual energy. His feet violently stomped the ground and his body suddenly laid down like a cheetah. His palms smashed onto the ground and the spiritual energy that wrapped his body seemed to have turned into the shape of a cheetah. His body instantly turned into a light figure and he stormed towards Mu Chen at an extremely surprising speed. Go to hell. This sudden burst of speed made Xue Tu appear behind Mu Chen in around 10 breaths of time. A violent spiritual energy fluctuation was on Xue Tu's fist as it was fired out. This attack was enough to instantly kill a person at the spiritual movement stage. At the same time, Mu Chen felt the surprising attack behind him. He would probably suffer grave injuries if he were to take it head-on. Mu Chen's eyes flashed crazily. He stared at the depths of the forest as if he was calculating his position. Then, he turned his body violently around and opened his palm. A black light emerged and he noticed a mysterious black paper suddenly appear from within it. Boom! After that mysterious black paper appeared in Mu Chen's palm, Xue Tu's fierce fist smashed heavily onto the black paper. Dong! A violent spiritual energy exploded outwards. Mu Chen's body seemed to be struck by lightning and fresh blood sprayed out from his mouth. That page of black paper returned back to his body and his body flew backwards. In the end, he fell into the depths of the forest. Xue Tu was surprised when he noticed that this fist didn't kill Mu Chen. However, his speed wasn't slow. He charged straight into the forest and stared at Mu Chen coldly as Mu Chen lay underneath a large tree. Are you going to continue to run? Xue Tu stared cruelly at Mu Chen as he was collapsed on the ground and laughed. There's no need. However, Mu Chen wiped off the blood from the corner of his lips when facing Xue Tu's merciless smile. Instead, a mocking smile appeared on the boy's handsome face. Now it's your turn to escape, trash. When Xue Tu heard this, his pupil retracted. As he was about to speak, a furious howl burst out from the depths of the forest. A silver light charged out like lightning. This extremely violent spiritual energy seemed to directly cause a storm within the forest. A silver, horned panther dragon. When Xuetu saw this majestic spiritual beast, his face instantly changed. He stared ferociously at Mu Chen and said, "What a ruthless boy, you plan on dying together with me. However, you're still too inexperienced. As long as I escape from his territory, this spiritual beast will not chase after me. Instead, you will be the one that becomes his food." After Mu Chen heard his words, the mocking smile became even more intense. "Your body is covered with the blood of his cub. You think that it would let you escape this easily?" When he heard this remark, Xuetu hurriedly looked down at the sticky and fresh blood covering his body. His face changed dramatically. He finally understood that this seemingly innocent boy was actually setting up a trap for him since the very beginning. Pretending to throw out a spirit destruction bead, yet hiding a bottle of fresh blood instead. He was escaping while planning along the way. As Xuetu stared at the boy's mocking look, his heart shuddered. Was this really something that a reckless young boy would do? Mu Chen stared at Xuetu, whose face was changing color. He gently smiled and stared at the silver, horned panther dragon, who was letting out an immense killing intent. He let out a sigh of relief. "Boss Panther Dragon, I'm relying on you again this time. Please block this for me." Chapter 38 Revenge Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 38 Revenge Kill. Roar. A violent spiritual energy pervaded the inside of the forest. The silver, horned panther dragon stared at Xuetu, who was nearby and covered in blood, with its red eyes. A low roar filled with hatred and killing intent emitted constantly out from his mouth. From this human's body, it smelled the fresh blood of its cub. Could this abominable human hurt its cub before? Although a high-rank spiritual beast were many times more intelligent than a low-rank spiritual beasts, it was still incomparable to a human's. While it was angry, it only wanted to tear apart any human or spiritual beast that was tainted with its cub's smell. Bastard! Xuetu stared at the silver, horned panther dragon as his body emitted a cold chill. He glanced venomously at Mu Chen. Who would have imagined that this boy, who he could have captured easily, would be this cunning? He knew that this was a terrible situation for him, but he had a lustful nature. This is why he wanted to vent out fiercely before trouble arrived. Then, he found a beauty that was as beauty as a flower, and it instantly made his heart twitch. But how would we have known that this tiny twitch would bring forth such a large trouble to him? "I will never forgive you," Xuetu shouted out maliciously. As he stomped on the ground, a powerful spiritual energy suddenly erupted from his body. The man instantly retreated violently and passed through the thick woods. It was evident that he was planning on running. Roar! However, the silver, horned panther dragon did not intend to let him go this easily. In an instant, his powerful body lowered and it turned into a silver streak of light as it charged out. The silver, horned panther dragon possesses the strength of a spirit stage powerhouse. Its speed naturally surpassed Xuetu and it appeared behind him after a short moment. This violent spiritual energy fluctuation made Xuetu's face change. Spirit leopard slaughter. Nevertheless, Xuetu wasn't an ordinary person. He forcibly twisted his body in midair and spiritual energy gushed out as he let out a cry. The spiritual energy on the surface of his body actually turned into the shape of a spirit leopard and he fired off a punch. It was as if the leopard and human had fused when he smashed his fist over angrily at the silver, horned panther dragon. The spirit leopard wrapped around Xuetu's body as it collided fiercely with the silver light. A cry instantly rang out and violent spiritual energy shock waves expanded out, smashing the surrounding trees. Bang! As the spiritual energy impact expanded out, Xuetu's body flew back helplessly. He let out a painful scream, as his body fell heavily onto the ground and his right arm covered with blood. The center of his palm even had a bloody hole and fresh blood was pouring out. When Mu Chen noticed this, he lifted an eyebrow slightly. After all, he saw it clearly yesterday. The conflagration ape king was instantly killed by the silver, horned panther dragon. Yet, Xue Tu only lost an arm today to it. This guy was definitely powerful. Shua. The silver, horned panther dragon fell down on the ground and its beastly eyes stared coldly at Xue Tuesday. Without any delay, its muscular body darted forward again and the silver light was filled with the scent of death. When Xue Tu noticed, he hurriedly rolled back awkwardly a few rounds. Although he managed to avoid the silver, horned panther dragon's rush, he was still hit by the silver, horned panther dragon's steel-like tail. Poochie. The silver, horned panther dragon's tail swept and hit Xue Tu's chest. He instantly spat out blood from his mouth and his fierce eyes slowed down. After enduring these two attacks from the silver, horned panther dragon, he was already gravely injured. The injuries were much more severe than when he was fighting against Lu Ming and the others. If this continues, I'll be killed by the silver. Horned panther dragon. Xue Tu gritted his teeth and he stared maliciously towards the direction of Mu Chen. However, he was stunned. This is because the boy, who was lying on the ground earlier, had suddenly disappeared without him knowing. That little as asterisk hole. Just wait until I catch you, I will definitely make it so that you can neither live nor die. Xue Tu was so angry that his face turned blue as he let out a howl within his heart. Just when he was distracted, the silver, horned panther dragon charged over like lightning again. Its sharp claws left a deep blood trail on his body and the terrible pain made him see stars. This damn beast. Xue Tu cursed loudly and a strange red light flashed through his face suddenly. Fierceness surfaced within his eyes and his body hurriedly retreated backwards. Afterwards, his hands began to quickly form seals and a rampaging spiritual energy surged out from his body. As the spiritual energy poured out, a thunderstorm sound rang out. Boom! The sounds of thunder suddenly intensified and Xue Tu spat out fresh blood. His sluggish aura rapidly increased all of a sudden and his speed also accelerated. He turned into a vague shadow as he turned to the other way and desperately tried to escape. Roar! The silver, horned panther dragon also let out a roar when it noticed the desperately escaping Xue Tuesday. Its body turned into a silver light and it chased after him as if it was not planning to spare him. A human and a beast crazily darted through the forest. Xue Tu was secretly resentful as he noticed the silver, horned panther dragon in hot pursuit of him. The method of stimulating his spiritual energy would hurt himself gravely. The aftereffects were not small either. But in this current situation, did he have any other options? If he fails to escape from the silver, horned panther dragon, he would definitely die today. While he was being chased, Xue Tu spat out 5 mouthfuls of blood. His originally dark face was pale like a sheet of paper. The sense of frailness that came from his body made his head dizzy. However, he was finally able to relax. After chasing Xue Tu for approximately 10 minutes, the silver, horned panther dragon gradually slowed down. In the end, it let out a roar and turned away leisurely. He watched as the silver, horned panther dragon gave up, but he did not dare stop. He held a breath as it fled for another few minutes before rolling awkwardly to a cluster of bush. Xue Tu's body became limp when he rolled into the bushes. His spiritual energy was almost completely exhausted. He constantly panted heavily before he looked down at the injuries on his body. He wanted to weep, yet there were no tears. Who would expect that he would suffer such a helpless fate because he wanted to hunt down a spiritual movement stage brat? This was something that even Lu Ming and the others couldn't do. Little trash, I'll never forgive you. Xue Tu gritted his teeth as he said out maliciously. Swish. Just when these words were blurted out, the hairs on his body trembled. His many memories of life and death lingered in his head and emptied his mind. Shwa. A cold chill erupted out from the forest behind him. Then, a sharp coldness flashed by his head and a deep bloodstain appeared on his face. This sudden attack made Xue Tu's face change instantly. He shouted out. Who? The person you wanted to see the most. A cheerful laughter rang out from the forest. Afterwards, a figure slowly came out. It was Mu Chen, with a tall height and brilliant smile seen on his handsome face. Little trash, you dare come over here. Xue Tu suddenly cried out when he saw Mu Chen coming out from the forest. Mu Chen stared at him with a half-dot smile and spiritual energy surged out from his body. However, the black eyes did not have any hint of smiling intent and was instead filled with a chill. Boy, what are you planning to do? Although my condition isn't great right now, you would probably still lose your life if I do a desperate counterattack. Xue Tu quickly shouted when he saw Mu Chen's appearance. After all, we should mind our own businesses. Why don't we just cancel everything that happened today? Mu Chen suddenly stopped moving and frowned. He said. You really won't search for me to look for trouble? Xue Tu quickly said. I can hardly protect myself now. I can swear. After all, why would I dare trouble you after you return to the Northern Spiritual Academy? What you said was true. Mu Chen seemed to hesitate as he nodded slightly. Bnoel Dem Xue Tu's heart jumped with joy, but before he revealed his happiness. The corner of Mu Chen's mouth revealed a mocking smile. But I still want to kill you. Shua. Mu Chen's body darted over violently and the spiritual energy within his body surged rapidly. A black light emitted out from his fists and two black light seals emerged faintly. Little trash, you just ruined your chance of saving yourself from the disgrace. You have a death wish. Xue Tu's eyes turned dark when he saw Mu Chen charging over. He pushed out the remaining spiritual energy within his body and filled his arms with it. He let out a cry within his heart and his arms stabbed out like spears. Limitless Death Seal. Mu Chen clenched his fists tightly and let out a cry in his heart. The two black light seals erupted out a powerful black light. An overbearing and violent fluctuation emitted from the black light. Boom! The four fists collided against each other fiercely. The grass at their locations were forcibly destroyed due to the shock wave. As the spiritual energy impact burst out, the two figures flew backwards as fresh blood came out from their mouths. When Mu Chen landed on the ground, he did not stop at all. His body darted forward like a cheetah and a powerful suction. Like power appeared in his hand. He recovered the dagger that he threw earlier back into his hands. Shua. At this moment, Xue Tu's body was already extremely sluggish. A cold chill flashed through his black eyes when Mu Chen approached instantly and a black light flashed across his eyes. Fresh blood scattered everywhere. Painful screams resounded through the sky from Xue Tuesday. His arms danced wildly as if it was attempting to kill Mu Chen. However, Mu Chen's body faded and reappeared behind Xue Tuesday. The dagger within his hand was like a venomous snake and he stabbed fiercely into Xue Tu's vital points. The entire dagger entered the man's body. Fresh blood flowed through the dagger endlessly dripped out. Xue Tu, who was frantically swinging his body around, suddenly froze and collapsed down to the ground. His pale face still had an incredulous expression. He was a spiritual rotation stage late phase powerhouse, yet he would actually plummet to his death against a spiritual movement stage boy. When Xue Tu fell onto the ground, Mu Chen's legs also grew weak and he sat down on his butt. A sweet taste emerged within his throat and he spat out fresh blood again. After Mu Chen rested on the ground for a while, he gritted his teeth and approached Xue Tu's corpse. His hands probed around Xue Tu's body. He had nearly lost his life, so he should definitely obtain some spoils of war. He wondered if the item that Xue Tu stole from the Lu territory people was on his body or not. Chapter 39 Mustard Seed Bracelet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 39, mustard seed bracelet. Mu Chen's hand probed around Xue Tu's corpse. He was not that interested in Xue Tu, but he was extremely interested on the item that Xue Tu stole from the Lu territory. The Blood Slaughter Group was considered a relatively well-known force within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Although it cannot compare with the 9 territories, it was still quite capable. They were quite bossy with their daily actions, but they would take note not to cause trouble for the 9 territories. This was because they knew that the Blood Slaughter Group was no match for the 9 territories. Therefore, Mu Chen was curious. Just what item would make the Blood Slaughter Group take such a high risk and attack the Lu territory? Moreover, the reaction that the Lu territory gave made Mu Chen somewhat surprised. They actually massacred the Blood Slaughter Group and were unwilling to give up as they chased Xue Tu into the northern spiritual field. It was obvious that the item that Xue Tu stole was something that they cared deeply about. Would an item that even the Lu territory was greatly concerned about be ordinary? Within the northern spiritual realm, the Lu territory was the strongest amongst the 9 territories. Moreover, the Lu territory had always wanted to become the true boss of the northern spiritual realm. They used various means such as bribing and threatening to increase their strength among the northern spiritual territories. Furthermore, they would often reveal a position as if they were the strongest force within the northern spiritual realm. Towards the Lu territory, who were displaying their strength like this, the other territory lords weren't acknowledging it. Especially Mu Chen's father, Mu Feng. Mu Feng had bashed against the Lu territory's territory lord, Lu Qingtian, a long time ago. There was a lot of friction between the 2 territories and both sides disliked each other. Although they would smile on the surface towards each other, they would be ruthless towards the other when they had the chance. Because of this relationship, the 2 Lu brothers were always against him. Mu Chen naturally disliked the Lu territory as well. He was quite happy to do something that would harm the Lu territory. While these thoughts floated within Mu Chen's heart, his hand did not slow down. However, he did not discover anything strange on Xue Tu's body even after searching for a long time. He immediately frowned. Did this guy really hide the item? Mu Chen did not give up and directly removed Xue Tu's clothes. Just when Mu Chen took off the last piece, an item finally fell down from the clothes. Mu Chen's eyes immediately looked over. He only saw a silver-gray circle like a bracelet, and it flashed a faint silver light as it dropped down to the ground. Mu Chen quickly bent down to pick up the silver-gray circle. He turned it back and forth and did not see anything special to it. He pondered for a moment before his eyes lit up. Could this be a mustard seed bracelet? The so-called mustard seed bracelet is a rather special spiritual artifact. It's how a sacred mountain can conceal a mustard seed, yet a mustard seed could store a sacred mountain. 1. A line from the Buddhist scripture. This spiritual artifact has the power of constructing space and was an extremely valuable storage device. However, this item was rather expensive. Mu Chen had only saw it in his father's hand before. He did not expect that Xue Tu would also have it. Mu Chen fiddled with the gray mustard seed bracelet. It was said that this item could be imprinted by the owner's spiritual energy. If others were to touch it, the owner would immediately be aware of it. However, Xue Tu was dead now, the spiritual energy imprint must have disappeared by now. Mu Chen's hand grabbed onto the mustard seed bracelet and allowed his spiritual energy to flow into the mustard seed bracelet. A sudden space appeared within Mu Chen's perception. This was the mustard seed bracelet storage space. Inside the mustard seed bracelet, Mu Chen definitely found many items. However, there was all kinds of items. He fumbled around roughly, yet he was not able to discover anything special. How could this guy have so much trash? He is still the Blood Slaughter Group's captain. Mu Chen let out a sigh and began to carefully search. After searching for a while, Mu Chen's mind suddenly moved. A light appeared within his hand and an ancient copper piece appeared. When Mu Chen's spiritual energy swept through the mustard seed bracelet, the other items would react to the spiritual energy. However, only this item did not move at all. For being this ordinary, it attracted Mu Chen's attention. Mu Chen stared at the ancient copper piece and noticed that an obscure copper engraving covered the copper piece. These engravings were so complicated that it made him slightly dizzy when he looked at it. At the back of the copper engravings, the engraving lines were slightly clearer. He could roughly see a giant black bird flying with its wings. Underneath the giant bird was a mountain stream. However, the mountain stream seemed to be embraced by the giant bird. The wings covered the mountain. Just what spiritual beast is this? Mu Chen was somewhat surprised. Although the copper piece was quite vague, he was still able to feel a sense of awe from the engravings. This was what made him astonished. Just what spiritual beast was able to make him feel a sense of awe just through an engraving? Could it be a heaven-ranking beast? Mu Chen frowned and turned the copper piece around. However, he did not find anything else and could only shake his head. His instincts told him that it was highly possible that this item was the item that Xue Tu stole from the Lu territory. But as to what use this thing had, he would probably know only after letting his father check. Mu Chen shrugged. Just when he was about to continue looking around in the mustard seed bracelet, his mind suddenly moved. He heard the sound of winds breaking. Based on the direction, it was obvious that they were coming towards him. Mu Chen quickly placed the copper piece within the mustard seed bracelet. Afterwards, he quickly wore the mustard seed bracelet and used his sleeves to cover it up. Then, he swiftly made Xue Tu wear back his clothes. Just when he finished with all this, a few figures emerged nearby. In a short moment, these figures appeared in the open space. Mu Chen glanced over and let out a sigh of relief. It was Teacher Mo and the others. Mu Chen. When Teacher Mo appeared, he saw Mu Chen standing nearby. His tensed face became delighted. His body moved and appeared next to Mu Chen and asked, "Are you all right?" Mu Chen smiled as he nodded with his head. Although he was slightly pale, his condition was still fine. "I heard from Qianer that you two met Xue Tuesday. Thus, I immediately chased all the way over. I finally met you here." It was evident that Teacher Mo was relieved when he saw Mu Chen safe and sound. However, he immediately frowned and looked at the surroundings. "That's right, where's Xue Tuesday? That guy really has guts, he actually dares to attack our Northern Spiritual Academy's students." Mu Chen let out a hollow laugh and pointed to the bush in front of him. He said, "That guy's dead." Teacher Mo's expression showed that he was clearly stunned. At the same time, Teacher Shi, who was behind him, was also startled. Afterwards, he waved his sleeves and a powerful spiritual energy directly blew away the bush. The cold corpse was exposed from it. This. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi stared at the cold corpse. Their expressions changed and they stared incredulously at Mu Chen. What exactly happened? Just when Mu Chen was about to speak, the sound of wind breaking could be heard from another direction. He saw Lu Ming bringing a group of men as they approached quickly. Behind him were Lu Mubai and Lu Yan. They showed a surprised expression when they noticed that Mu Chen was actually safe and sound. Xue Tuesday. Lu Ming instantly noticed the corpse on the ground. His expression immediately changed and he urgently said, "What happened?" As he spoke, his sharp eyes stared at Mu Chen. This gaze made Mu Chen feel quite uncomfortable. "Did you do it?" Mu Chen faced his glare and shook his head. He said, "I was getting chased by him earlier and nearly lost my life. Luckily, I met an old man who killed Xue Tuesday." An old man. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly and he stared suspiciously at Mu Chen. He waved his hand and two of his men approached Xue Tu's corpse. After searching for a while, they shook their heads towards Lu Ming. When Lu Ming noticed this, his eyes twitched. He stared at Mu Chen again and a gentle smile emerged on his face. Mu Chen, did you see the item that Xue Tu was holding? What item? Mu Chen blinked and asked with a smile. The old man searched around after taking care of him. However, I was hiding far away and did not dare approach. I don't know what he took. Lu Ming's expression instantly turned cold. Mu Chen, enough with your nonsense. You must have taken the item on Xue Tu's body. As for that old man, you probably just made it up. Lu Yang yelled out. You're saying? Mu Chen looked at him strangely and said. I was the one who killed this Xue Tuesday. Lu Yang dawdled and was speechless. Xue Tu was at the spiritual rotation stage late phase and was only a step away from reaching spirit stage. It was basically like a dream for Mu Chen to kill him. Lu Mubai stared coldly at Mu Chen. A dark and cold flame surged in the depths of his eyes. Oh ho ho, Mu Chen. There's no need to joke with me. If you really took his item, I would definitely be grateful if you hand it over to me. Moreover, I will personally head to the Mu territory and talk to your father about this matter. Lu Ming tried his best to make his expression look gentler as he spoke. Third Master Lu, I really didn't see anything on his body. I was already quite afraid when I was being chased by him. Why would I dare to take the initiative and approach him? Mu Chen shook his head. His face looked quite honest and genuine. The corners of Lu Ming's eyes jumped. He finally could not suppress the rage within his heart. Although he did not believe that Mu Chen was able to kill Xue Tu, he was still the prime suspect. He immediately took a step forward and grasped at Mu Chen. He coldly said. Since you refuse to tell the truth, then let me personally search your body. When Mu Chen noticed Lu Ming stretching his hand over, he gripped his hand for a moment and a black dagger appeared within his hand. However, just when Lu Ming's hand was about to grasp onto Mu Chen, another hand suddenly extended out and blocked it. Teacher Mo glanced at Lu Ming and a faint voice made Lu Ming's body tremble. Lu Ming, you're going too far. Chapter 40 Result You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 40 Result Lu Ming, you're going too far. When Lu Ming heard the hint of anger within Teacher Mo's voice, his face instantly stiffened. He was wary as, Teacher Mo was a genuine spirit stage powerhouse. Moreover, he had the identity of a head instructor in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Even the Lu territory wouldn't dare to carelessly offend him. Oh ho ho, Teacher Mo, please don't be angry. I was just a bit impatient. However, Teacher Mo should understand that we, the Lu territory, have suffered a terrible loss. We naturally want to obtain the item that was lost now that Xue Tu was killed. Lu Ming cupped his hands towards Teacher Mo and said politely. Teacher Mo said faintly. I understand your feelings, but this isn't a reason for you to search my student's body so freely in front of me. If it wasn't because of the fact that you forced Xue Tu into the northern spiritual field, Mu Chen wouldn't have met a situation where he nearly lost his life. Now that he managed to escape, you are acting like this. Thus, I'm afraid I won't agree to it. Lu Ming noticed that Teacher Mo was insistent on protecting Mu Chen. The smile on his face became a bit more forced and he said. This matter was indeed caused by us. Speaking of which, if he is willing to hand it over to us, we will give him a satisfactory compensation. We only hope that we can get our item back. Mu Chen placed away the dagger within his hand and faced Lu Ming, who had dark and cold eyes, as he shook his head. He said. Third Master Lu, I really didn't take your item. That's because that's my war spoil. This phrase flashed through Mu Chen's heart. He was nearly killed by Xue Tu today. How could it be possible for him to hand the item over? You. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and his expression became darker. However, he did not dare do anything to Mu Chen since Teacher Mo was beside him. If you want it, then just keep the item. However, be careful since some items will kill you. Lu Ming glanced at Mu Chen somberly and could not endure the flames of rage burning within his heart. He gestured with his hand and turned around as he brought Lu Mubai and the others away. Mu Chen stared at Lu Ming and the others as they stormed away angrily. He acted as if he didn't even hear the threats towards him. "Thank you, Teacher Mo." Mu Chen turned to look at Teacher Mo and expressed his gratitude. "You are one of the Northern Spiritual Academy's students. Right now, we are participating in a training organized by the Northern Spiritual Academy. Naturally, I would have to protect you." Teacher Mo gave a faint smile and smiled as if there was some sort of profound meaning to it. L.RG, okay, let's head back to the camp. Mu Chen gave a hollow laugh as he was being stared at by Teacher Mo. Then, he did not say anything and turned around as he quickly walked towards the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi stared at each other behind him. Afterwards, they stared once again at the cold corpse of Xue Tuesday. Teacher Shi frowned and said, "How could this boy be so lucky to actually meet an expert and be rescued by him?" This possibility was indeed quite low. However, wasn't the possibility of Mu Chen killing Xue Tu, who was at the spiritual rotation stage late phase, with his own strength even lower? Teacher Mo let out a laugh as if he didn't want to comment on it. He stared at the boy's figure in front of him. After all, he had witnessed Mu Chen tricking a conflagration ape king to death. Thus, he understood that if anyone dares to view him as ordinary, they would probably pay a large price for it. Others might believe that it was an incredulous situation if Mu Chen was able to personally kill an expert like Xue Tu. However, he himself didn't think that it was impossible. The seemingly gentle sunshine that was the boy had a heart that was calmer and sharper than ones that adventurers hone in life and death situations. His means of dealing with things weren't something that an ordinary person could compare. He really is an interesting little guy. No wonder he became the only one who qualified for the spiritual road within the Northern Spiritual Realm. When Mu Chen returned to the camp, a large commotion rang out. Mo Ling, Tan Qingshan and the others immediately surrounded him. It was obvious that they knew the news about Mu Chen meeting with Xue Tuesday. Mu Chen smiled towards them and indicated that he was fine. He tilted his head and looked at the pretty girl who had red eyes. "Sorry, it was all my fault," Tang Qianer said while she had red eyes. If it wasn't because of her, Mu Chen would not have met with Xue Tu and be forced into a dangerous situation. "We are teammates, and I formed a team with such a beautiful girl. If no trouble were to occur, wouldn't it fail to live up to good fortunes of mine?" Mu Chen teased her as he spoke. When the girl heard this, her face instantly turned red. She playfully hit Mu Chen and the sad expression faded slightly. Teacher Mo and the others also returned quickly. Then, news of Xue Tu being killed spread out. At this moment, many students were stunned and they stared in surprise at Mu Chen, who had an innocent look on his face. "Could it be that you were the one that did this?" Tang Qianer approached Mu Chen and secretly asked. "Do you think that it's possible?" Mu Chen smiled. He knew how unbelievable this situation sounds, yet the truth was just that. If Xue Tu wasn't gravely injured by the silver, horned panther dragon and consumed his spiritual energy desperately in order to escape, it was basically impossible for Mu Chen to kill him. If it's the others, it might be impossible. However, you are so cunning. Who knows? Tang Qianer playfully smiled. She had a strange confidence towards Mu Chen. Others might believe that it was impossible, but she felt that it might be possible for the boy in front of her. Mu Chen smiled and stretched his body. While stretching, he was thinking about the ancient copper piece within the mustard seed bracelet. It seems that he must find a time to return back to the Mu territory. Since this item was valued greatly by the Lu territory, it must not be a simple item. Therefore, he must let his father personally take a look at it. Since Xue Tu was killed, Teacher Mo and the others were less alert during the following days. Therefore, They did not end the training earlier and instead let the students hone themselves in the outskirts of the northern spiritual field. Lu Ming brought his men away on the day after Xue Tu was killed. However, the cold gaze that stared at Mu Chen before he left allowed Mu Chen to know that this matter wasn't over so easily. Because of this warning, Mu Chen became more careful during the next few days. Although he did not believe that Lu Ming would dare to attack him while Teacher Mo was guarding him, it was still best if he was a little bit more cautious. While he remained vigilant, the half-a-month training gradually reached the end. In the camp, there was a lively atmosphere. All the students had faces filled with expectations and excitement. This was because today was the day for grading the results of this training. Mu Chen stood in front of the East Branch students. Beside him was Tang Qianer. The girl had also broken through to the spiritual movement stage late phase a week ago due to the jaded essence fruit. Right now, her beautiful eyes were filled with light. She wanted to know what kind of results she would get together with Mu Chen after all this time. In front of everybody, Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi looked around at the many students as they nodded in satisfaction. Compared to half a month ago, the students seemed to have become more capable. It was evident that the training had quite the effect on them. As of today, the Northern Spiritual Field training is officially over. Next up, it is time to grade the results. Each team should bring the spiritual beast's soul essences that they collected over to us during this period. We will record it and grade the results. Teacher Mo nodded towards the recording staff member beside him and said, "Let's begin."